Okay, so our workshop is Meanwhile Operación Castellana. And it takes place in the area of La Castellana in the northern part of Madrid. It is a 300-hectare open space between the urban tissue. The place is going to change. There is a plan to develop the area. And well, I want to explain you a little bit about this plan. The whole idea that they have is to extend the street of La Castellana, because the area around La Castellana right now, the land has a very high value. So of course, to the bank that is behind this whole project, it makes a lot of sense to extend La Castellana and increase the value of the land in this area. If you see, the investment is really, really high, and the amount of apartments and projects that they are going to build is considerable. And taking into consideration the fact that of all the other projects that we've just seen about how eviction processes and everything has left a lot of buildings unused in Spain, it doesn't really make much sense. Especially when they're considering developing a new financial district with a lot of skyscrapers, which means a lot of square meters that we don't really know how they will be used, but this is the area of La Castellana right now, and this is what they're proposing. So, whether the plan is good or bad, it is already approved and it is already underway. And it will be developed over 24 years. It has been a very controversial plan, and it has been in works for like 30 years now. So what we were wondering is this really the best way to develop the city? We analyzed how the place is going to change from the current uses to the future uses, and how is this all going to relate. And we also identified the existing needs. This is really important because these needs come from an actual survey that was performed before this workshop. So we analyzed the existing proposal that they have, and yes, some of these needs are going to be met with this plan, but the question really is, can people really wait 24 years to have their needs met? Or should they really? So this is where Meanwhile Urbanism comes in. This is the current proposal, right? It is a very linear approach. But we are proposing a completely different approach, more like a grid, where you have many options to get from A to B. There are many different ways, and there are also even some dead ends. But the idea in general is to come up with a whole series of ephemeral projects or proposals that will help the people not only prepare for what's coming and to prepare the site for the change that it will have to undergo, but to really relate the people to the site so they won't reject it once it's built, because we know a lot of projects that have had this situation where this whole new site is built and people just don't like it, they don't use it, and it's a complete waste of money. So we develop all of these ephemeral projects around the site, and we go along as the development phases go. But we're going to explain it first by topics. So this is identity and culture. You can see we have education, heritage, tradition, many types of activities, social and economic activities as well. The idea is to try to satisfy also the current needs through mobility, temporary edifications, and public space, energy and waste, trying to increase biodiversity in site. We can also explain this by phases. So these are the activities that would take place on the first phase, which is for 2022. And the idea is to start developing all of these activities from now until 2022. Then until 2024, and 2038, which is 24 years from now. So this is a diagram which explains all of the projects that we are proposing throughout the different phases, and the idea is to see how these projects not only take place, but how they change, how they evolve, and in some cases they even become the actual proposals that they have on the plan. For example, with the arts and culture, we have, we'll see later on, an art exhibition that eventually does become a creative boulevard. But we also would like to see how these proposals not only become the actual thing that they're proposing, but how they start changing, the site changing the plan that they have. We would also suggest that they have milestone revisions along the way to really question themselves, is this really the way that we should go? So in total, we are proposing more than 90 meanwhile interventions. But what exactly is a meanwhile intervention? To explain this further, we developed a few pilot projects within the same topics that we already have established. This is a bike path in the current situation and its location. Then we have on the first phase how you start developing a bike path with very little investment. Then how on the second phase the bike path improves, and now we have a bicycle repair shop and also bicycle rentals. This is another pilot project. This is an urban farm. This is the current situation where what we have is a parking lot. Then how we could use the parking lot space to develop an urban farm. Then how it could also become an urban garden or a linear park. Then when the Operación Castellana finally does happen, this is something that we would really like to see eventually, how the people or the designers involved actually start questioning their process and maybe even include the what we were proposing before, what people have become accustomed to. This is another project which is in front of the train station right now. It has a very large parking lot with no real use. So we are proposing several projects for this area. This is what would be if we use the space for sports. If we developed some kind of fair in the place or an open cinema. And then we could also have all the programs happening at the same time. But how do we do this, really? So this is another pilot project, but we're also going to explain all the actors involved. So this is where the investors come in, the design school, the citizens, the unemployed architect, the elderly, and the kindergartens around the area. This is a street that goes right in front of the art school. So how we would start using the space mainly for art exhibitions, so we can see all the actors and their responsibilities throughout time. Eventually, it would become a larger project. We would have more investment once we see that the projects do work and that they do attract people. But exactly what would people see? How do we really sell this project? How do we convince investors? So there's where the most finalist images come. And you can see how the projects start like a very small scale, then they become larger scale, and how the Operación Castellana is being developed in the background. But the idea is really to involve the people. So hopefully our meanwhile interventions will get to raise some questions and give some feedback to the planners and designers involved in the process, and hopefully impact the final design of the Operación Castellana. So we would also like for you to keep track of the project on Facebook and see where it goes. Thank you.